Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Dr. Drew Johnson. Dr. Johnson, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, everybody. But yeah, happy to be here. And yeah, looking forward to this conversation.
Man, it's a pleasure. And I know you have been in higher education for over 10 years. I know your commitment is to advise and to provide, especially the students, the next generation of leaders, the best pathway to success. So before we get into the conversation itself, I would love for you to share with the listeners more about you so they can get an understanding of who you are before we get into the conversation itself. Dr. Johnson, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Okay, just a little background about myself. So I'm originally from Raleigh, North Carolina. Former student athlete. I started out my basketball career at Virginia Commonwealth University. And then I transferred to North Carolina Central University, I want to say my sophomore year. Played sports there, graduated, but really didn't really know what I wanted to do after undergrad. And so trying to find my niche or trying to find my path is kind of what directed me to the higher ed space. I think my passion developed with working with student athletes and just helping them navigate that transition piece after sports, trying to figure out their life, figure out what the next thing to do is. And then that kind of matriculated into where I'm at now as far as being the program director for our McNair Scholars Program, to where we're helping students who are coming from similar backgrounds as myself and helping them navigate and finding different success paths towards their overall getting their PhD degrees as well. And so that's kind of what's been my journey. Just have a strong passion for student success and really a strong passion for students who don't necessarily come from the same equality or resources that others may have had growing up, and helping them close that gap to become those global citizens and make an impact.
Man, that's awesome. And those students who are at a disadvantage always needs a champion, someone who will help them to navigate their way, of course, but show them by being the example of what is possible. As you shared, that you're coming from a similar background as the students that you serve. So not only that you're providing them with the tools to be successful, they can see that you have achieved at the highest, especially with education levels. So that in itself will serve as inspiration to the students. Man, I commend you on the work that you're doing for the next generation of leaders and citizens. So my first question to you today is, what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
I think for me, the mindset is every day just doing what you're supposed to do, and then kind of letting the chips fall where they may. If I feel like if you go into a space to where it's like, hey, I want to make this positive impact, or I want to do that, then you're gonna kind of lose sight or lose focus on what the actual mission at hand is. So if every day, if I'm supposed to lay a brick as perfect as a brick can lay, if I'm focused on, well, the gravel or what's it going to lay on, or hey, is somebody going to see this brick later on? I think you lose the mission at hand, as far as just focusing on, okay, if I do what I'm supposed to do, and know like this is how it's supposed to be done, and this is what needs to be done. The end results are people are going to see that, or people are going to see what you're doing along the way, and then actually kind of want to emulate that, or just want to make that applicable to their life. And so that's kind of the mindset I have as far as that positive impact. If you're leading by example, if you're setting the tone for what you want your students to kind of look at you and see to do, I feel like that's my mindset when it comes to making a positive impact.
Man, that's a great perspective. I actually like that because sometimes we can get caught up in what else happening around us and not realizing that our job is to do what we are there to do. And if we do our part, because one thing, we cannot control what others do. We have to focus on doing what we are there to do. And when we do our part, individuals are going to see us or see the impact that we are having and not what's really going on. Things are going to happen around us that are not what we always want, but we cannot and should not, as you have shared, focus on what's happening. and more so focus on what we are there to do to make the impact. So, man, I really appreciate that perspective because sometimes we can get pulled into things that really have no concern about us and what we are there to do. So, man, I'm glad that you shared that. And being that this program is really focusing on what we can do as Black men. So, my next question is, what advice do you have for the men listening and how they can play a role in creating positive change?
It's kind of, you mentioned a little bit there, things are going to be happening around us, right? I call it organized chaos. I think that my advice for people is just control the controllable.
Okay.
Uh, Kind of like we said, like there's going to be things happening around us. If you get caught up in, oh man, someone else's experience versus yours, it could really, you could go down a rabbit hole really fast, especially in a higher ed setting, to where it's like, oh, okay, this person has this going. Why are they getting this credit? What am I doing wrong? Versus just, okay, if I know I have a job to do, well, let me focus on that job. How can I make that impact? And it's just controlling the controllable. You control your own narrative, right? Not really getting caught up. I heard a lady say, I think last week, someone else's opinion ain't got nothing to do with me. So, or someone else's opinion of me has nothing to do with me, right? As far as I can't make them think a certain way about me. And so, really, it's just controlling the controllable, knowing your job or what your role is. I try to tell people, like, everybody could be a star within their role. And so, if you know, like, hey, I'm supposed to A to B. That's my job. A to B, A to B. There's no need to really get caught up in what's happening with S and T over here. It's just focus on what you got to do, control the controllable, and then kind of see how the chips fall how they play out. I always feel like if you're doing what you're supposed to do, things are going to work out for you in the end. It's just a matter of sticking with it and seeing it through.
Okay. Well, man, that's great. Again, we cannot control what people say. People are going to have their opinions, and what I find is that even when you're doing great work, people will find something to say. And if you're not doing great work, someone will be there to say something. So it goes back to what you have said that we just have to focus on doing our part and don't worry about the opinions of others because people will always have an opinion. And if we focus on the opinion, we may take away from doing what we are there to do and lose out on making the impact that we can make. But this question that I want to ask, like when you're there serving the students, right? Do you find students come to you and just share just by you being there how inspired they are just to see you doing the work that you're doing? And what does that like experience, what's that experience like?
So I feel like with this generation of students, they are maybe the most emotionally available when it comes to, hey, Dr. Johnson, I just want to let you know, I just want to say thank you, right? I feel like as higher ed practitioners, you have to really be comfortable with the thankless work. And so a lot of times they're not, they students may not come and say how appreciative they are of you. Every now and every blue moon, you might get something that was like, oh, wow, okay, is this working? But for the most part, I think that students really kind of want to know how much you care before they care about how much you know. And so I think you can kind of fill in the blanks as far as students appreciate you, to where do they come around when you don't really have a set meeting for them, or when you do interact with them, the little nuggets that you give them, do you start seeing them applying that to their everyday life? And so I think for me, that's the piece of them saying thank you. If they quote something I said to them maybe a few weeks ago, then that to me is like, okay, okay, I know you were listening. Okay, you weren't just blowing me off. So that's the piece of them saying, you had this impact on me, or you made this difference for me. So that's they don't necessarily come out and say it, but you can kind of see in their actions that, okay, they were listening and they get it.
Man, that's awesome. Man. And I like what you just said that these students sometimes are not the students of this generation that will come and tell you thank you. But you also, as an individual in that space, have to realize that you can't sit around waiting to be thanked for the work that you're doing. Because if you are there waiting, you may feel as if you're not making an impact. When you in yourself may realize that you're making an impact, but not just to sit there waiting for someone to tell you thank you or pat you in the back that you're doing a great job. So I really appreciate that perspective because when we are in our space and doing the work that we're passionate about, Sometimes you may feel as if, oh, I wonder if I'm making the impact that I'm supposed to make, and cannot allow not feeling appreciated at times. Although it's a human need to feel appreciated, but we cannot and should not let that dictate if we do our part of the work. So I really appreciate that perspective. So my next question is, how can we as Black men help to change the narrative today? And you can choose what area you want to focus on, but how can we as Black men change the narrative?
Man, that's an interesting question because, like you said, different sectors kind of have different views. I would say from the higher ed landscape, my Black male students that I get to work with, I think changing the narrative is getting them experience to different cultures, experience to different avenues of success, and finding them early when they first get to campus versus wait until their midway junior year, senior year, to where it's like, hey, now they figured out a career that they want to get into, or oh, I think I need an internship, or I think I need a mentor. Trying to get them early to where the narrative of, hey, you're here to get a degree, you're not here to just hang out, to just you're not here just to be here. And then that stigma of, do you want to be present or do you want to have a presence? And trying to instill in that early on in their college journey. So as they matriculate, they become those leaders early on versus, like I said, their junior, senior year, and they want to be a leader. And you can always see it's the same pocket of students to where you can see the students come in their freshman year who, okay, that kid's going to be an SGA president. I can already see that. He's just got something about him. And then trying to just getting that to the other freshmen that come in there as well. Because I know for each college campus is different. For our campus, we bring in a lot of students from rural areas. And so helping them get out of their shell early on to where I think that could really help change the narrative, to where getting them to see, broaden their horizons, and just getting them to see like, hey, you can have this impact. You don't have to just be here. You could actually have a presence here.
Okay. I know you mentioned in what you're just saying about mentorship. How does the students go about the mentorship? Do you encourage it? Are some students willingly take the initiative to seek their own mentors? How does that look for you with your experience?
That's always been like a real funny thing for me because I always hear people say about they have mentees or they're a mentor. And for me, it's just about organic relationships I have with students. Like sometimes the students I'm closest with, they've never been in any of my classes. They're not in my program that I run. It's just me being out on campus, seeing them, and then you kind of start those impromptu conversations with them. And then all of a sudden that kind of grows into like, hey, where's your office at, Dr. Johnson? Oh, it's over here. Okay, I'm gonna come by and see you one day. Might come by like, okay, so what are you trying to do after graduation? And then it kind of stems from that. So first it's like, hey, where are you from? Okay, you're from Raleigh? I'm from Raleigh. Okay, cool, cool. You got any siblings? And then you start to kind of know those, you start to have those emotional connections with students. And so for me, that's kind of how it grows into being a mentor, having that mentorship. I don't really necessarily have any, hey, I want you to sign this piece of paper that says I'm your mentor and we're going to have this agreement. I feel like it's just those organic relationships I have with students to where we just let it authentically grow and let it authentically becomes what it becomes. I feel like if you always operate with the student's best interest at heart, that's going to be just a natural mentorship anyway. And I do tell students this all the time, like undergrad it's literally the last place where people genuinely want to see you succeed with no expectation of anything in return. And so take advantage of that. And so if I talk to you, if you have direct access to me, you could consider that a mentorship. You consider that a relationship because I tell students, really fast, like, hey, you have direct access to me, but someone else that I may not know that's just out in the real world, they might have to check my calendar and get back to them. So just be able to implore them to really take advantage of those spaces and of those moments. To me, that's kind of how the mentorship relationship gets started, just for me.
Man, I'll just touch on two things that you said that I believe is really important. The emotional connection, as you mentioned, that you try to find where you and the students have an affinity, where you share the same background or something else, maybe siblings or the amount of siblings or their interests of study. And where you said, when it comes to students, is to have the students' best interests at heart. And once you operate within that frame of mind, I believe it can be great for the students, also great for the leader who the students sometimes will look up to. Just making that emotional connection, because that's what really have a students start developing the trust for those who they're talking to, are talking with. And also, once you're there with the students' best interests at heart, I believe that will help those students to become who they can become. Because not all students have someone who they can really count on. And when they can develop that trust in you, then you can get them to become the best they can be. Because whatever you tell them that's of their best interest, they will take heed. And I think being in the space, especially of higher education, and sometimes having students who are coming from a background that may be the most vulnerable, having someone they can trust, I believe is great for them and also great for the institution, because it helps those students to matriculate and achieve the goal that they started their journey to achieve. So my next question is, what or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path that you're on?
I would say probably my best friend, Dr. Julian Capel. So I know we were teammates at VCU together, and when I transferred, we stayed in contact. Talked every day. We were best man at each other's weddings. I think seeing we and the funny thing about athletes, right? We were both trying to find our way after sports, trying to find different things, different avenues to explore. And so I can remember like every day we call each other after work, like, man, you're not gonna believe this. Just right about like just dead end jobs that we may have had, or just our experiences that was like this is not the answer, or man, I really feel like I could contribute so much more to society. I just need a break. I just need something. And so I think he called me one time and told me about a job he first started having in higher ed and kind of worked his way in. And then he started his doctoral journey, started his process, and was telling me about that. And to where it kind of just opened my eyes to see, okay, if I really want to have impact or make a change, this is the avenue I could take. This is the direction I need to go in. And so we would just have those conversations daily about different things we needed to do. And so kind of that path is what really kind of set me on my trajectory. So it was helpful, definitely inspiring, and just definitely I was actually going through my process, just being able to kind of touch base and kind of like talk with somebody about it too, is where I felt I'd say 1,000 times less stressed than a lot of my cohort members did, just because I would be talking to somebody who actually went through this. I was talking to them when they went through it, so it wasn't anything that was a surprise or anything that was like, oh gosh, I don't know how to handle this. So that's kind of what really kind of helped me.
Oh man, that's great. I always have someone that you can bounce your ideas on or off, or hearing their journey before you yourself go on the journey can be very helpful, even before you start, because you get to understand what it takes before you set on the journey. But what was it for you? And I didn't even get to realize to check on your background, your doctoral degree. What was that focus?
Urban higher education from Jackson State University. So yep. And then
Okay.
just graduated this past December.
Oh man. Well, congratulations. That's really recent. But what caused you to pursue that specific doctoral degree?
It's interesting because I talk with students today about their grad school. You really have to find a program that's a good fit for you. So for me, I knew I wanted to continue to work in the higher ed space. I knew I needed something not necessarily flexible, but I needed something that worked for my schedule. And
Okay.
so I had a old colleague who went through the program as well, and just kind of talking with him about it. And it just worked for my program. It worked for my schedule to where, okay, I wanted to look into it more. And I knew once I got in there that I could do the work. It was just a matter of I just wanted to make sure it was a good fit. And so it to me, it was all about fit. It was fit and like flexibility for my schedule. Could it work? Could I have the support from my job? And so that's for me, that's what I was looking for. It wasn't like a particular professor was there that I knew I wanted to work under. It was just a matter of, okay, can I make this work for in my life? Can we kind of make these two kind of coexist together? And so that's what it came down to for me.
Okay. And I know you said a lot of the students that you currently work with, they're from the same kind of urban population. So that really goes well. So you gain the understanding of the students that you're currently working with to better serve them, because you have the foundation knowledge. And with the students, you kind of just just give you that understanding so you can better serve the students. So, my next question is, what is your perspective on the current climate of Black men in society today?
The current climate, it's definitely I want to say almost like a double-edged sword. You have a lot of issues with mental health. You have a lot of issues with just it just seems like an overbearing amount of pressure that could be on our shoulders. I think for the students that I get to work with, it's the mindset of you always want to make it home. With everything going on in the world, how chaotic it is, how crazy things are, you have all these different variables out there. I just try to implore to them like the main focus is you want to make it home, right? And so the whatever you kind of have to do, whatever sometimes it's swallowing your pride, sometimes it's swallowing your ego. I think that just always keep the main focus, the main focus. So if you're in school, know why you're here. Once you get out of school, once you start working, always remember, hey, the goal is to make it home. There's gonna be a lot of distractions, there's gonna be a lot of things out there. Make it home and take care of your responsibilities. A lot of times I see a lot of students who will get involved in situations, and when it gets a little bit tough, they'll kind of head for the head for the exit. And it's really about just seeing things through and just making sure that you're operating with integrity. And so that's the thing for me. It's times are going to get hard, times are going to get tough. It's just you have to battle through those tough times. You have to make it through, and don't try to just take on everything by yourself. Right? Just because we say, okay, you have to get through these tough times. There's different resources you could use to help get through those tough times. You don't have to necessarily take on everything by yourself, but use the resources available to you and just don't always take the easy way out. I think for me, a lot of times I see a lot of students once it gets a little bit hard, they'll just quit. And then it's just teaching them that intuitive like toughness a little bit, just to be a little bit mentally tough. You're gonna have some battles, but you can work through them.
Okay. And that's a great reminder because sometimes we do try to do everything on our own and take on all the responsibility and realize that we can utilize the resources that are available to us. But I'm just going to go back to that same question a little bit in regards to the current climate of Black males in society today. Do you see more Black men with PhDs and in leadership position? And what do you think that means for the next generation?
Mm, I feel like I'm starting to see more. I know at my particular institution, and I work in the Division of Student Affairs. I feel like there's one other Black male right now with their PhD. But I definitely see it's something that's starting to be more of a trend. I think it's something that I'm seeing a lot more people be inspired to kind of go after that. With seeing like Black males having that, I think, especially in the higher ed setting, it's just that platform to where it's like, okay, I see that person did that. And it's not any knock against that person, but that piece of, okay, I see they did it. I see how they went about it. Okay, I feel like I could do that. I could do that. Okay, maybe I can obtain that. And so it's not so much of a, oh no, that'll never be me type of mindset anymore. It's more of like, okay, that's gonna be me. That I could do that. They have kind of paved the way for me. So I'm definitely starting to see that in that higher ed space.
Oh man, that's awesome. And it's good to that the young or the next generation see through others what is possible. As they have said, it's easier to become what you see, and by them seeing you, it makes it easier for them to want to pursue higher education. So that's great. So my next question is, what change do you want to see in general amongst Black men?
I'm trying to think because it's not that I don't see that I got mine, you got to get yours. I definitely see us being more helpful towards each other. I'm trying to think. I really don't have a I want to see more of this when I look across the landscape of things. If anything, I would say just letting things organically and authentically happen and not necessarily force relationships on people or force, this mentorship on people, but letting things organically happen and just being a resource, but being a resource of just, hey, I just want to help you. I don't need anything in return. I'm just offering my wisdom and my help. There doesn't have to be any type of, oh, I get something, you have to get something. I think just that natural, authentic relationship with each other. I think that's a big thing I would like to see. And then probably more just partnerships, right? Relationships where, working together where it doesn't matter who gets the credit.
Yeah.
As long as we're developing some type of platform to where we can help better serve our students. So I think that's a big thing for me as far as not worrying about who gets the credit. I feel like if you're doing things the right way, doing what you're supposed to do, you'll get the credit down the line. And so that's a big thing I kind of see. It's people don't necessarily want to get involved unless they know how much credit they're going to get on the front end, and to where that piece alone can kind of really, I don't know, deter people from working with each other. And that's kind of something I would like to see.
Well, and that's a great perspective. And that's been the conversation of recently that working together, the collaboration is really important if we're going to move forward and be as impactful as would want to be, because there's something that that someone else may not, and vice versa. That person may know something that can be beneficial to you. So we have to realize that we can leverage what we know by helping each other to achieve their goal. And as you mentioned, don't worry too much about who gets the credit. And I think if we get away from that, we can help each other to be as successful as they are capable of becoming, or are the things that they want to achieve, and vice versa, just by being open and willing to help someone else. And others will help you to achieve the goal. So I really appreciate that perspective. So my next question is, what was a pivotal moment in your life?
Now, are we talking about just as far as to pursue PhD, or a pivotal moment just in general in life to where it's like try to change some things around?
Well, it can be a pivotal moment on your PhD journey, a pivotal moment your first year in college, just anything about what gave you a perspective on life and say, you know what, man, I'm going to do this and I'm going to change this. But you know what, just anything from any part of your life and stuff like that. So.
Okay, I think a pivotal moment for me was probably when I transferred to North Carolina Central University. Of course, being an athlete, you grow up and you have these dreams of playing in the NBA. You want to be this millionaire. And I think for me, a pivotal change was like knowing like that's probably an unrealistic goal or unrealistic avenue to take. And so a lot of times, if guys don't make it to the NBA, they explore playing professionally overseas. And for me, just seeing that wasn't necessarily the best option either, right? It doesn't necessarily, just because you play overseas doesn't mean you're going to have this great lifestyle. So that was a pivotal moment for me. I just kept seeing guys who were one track minded on either I'm going to play pro professionally or I'm going to play overseas. And then I would just look to myself like, okay, guys, we're about 10 and 15. No one's averaging 25, and we're in a lesser division. And so I would just kind of do the math or do the numbers like, okay, the last person to make it professionally out of where I'm playing at, they were doing way better than me. And so it was just being realistic and being honest with myself to where, okay, if this avenue isn't going to work, we need to figure out a different type of avenue to be successful, because it wasn't like it was going to be basketball or I'm just going to be living with my mom the rest of my life. It was like, no, I'm still going to have some success. We just have to figure out a different avenue for it. And so that was a pivotal point for me.
Well, man, and that's a great perspective, because especially when it comes to us as Black men, we are guided a lot of times, or like sports is the only way out to have a good life. Sports is the vehicle. Sports is the avenue. Sports is what's going to give us what we want out of life. And if you don't realize that more is possible than sports, you may end up giving up on yourself and not fulfilling your, or realizing your own potential outside of sports. Because I came across I think it was a documentary that I believe, and someone was telling me that it's not any longer on platform, but it's easier to become a doctor than it is to become a professional athlete. And a lot of times, the Black students, Black male students especially, don't realize that they sometimes are pushed into pursue that sport, go after that sporting career, and not realizing that they could become a doctor or a lawyer. And it's just whatever we put our minds to. and that we can actually achieve those goals. But man, I appreciate you sharing that because I don't know who, maybe younger people will be listening, and sometimes they need that perspective to realize that, oh, maybe I can be a doctor, I can be a lawyer, I can further my education and get my PhD and stuff like that. So I may not be able to play professional athlete, being a professional athlete. So I really appreciate that perspective. So my next question is, what life lesson have you learned late in life that you believe is important and can benefit this current generation?
Yeah, life lesson I learned late. I honestly, man, I think it would be through marriage. Me and my wife been married going on, I want to say 12 years now. We have two little boys. I think the most important lesson is like sometimes, if you do what you're supposed to do, like I said, that thankless work, you're not always going to get like a daddy parade, but your ability to be able to provide, be able to be that support, be able to just kind of, sometimes you just got to take it on the chin with a lot of different things. And it's not necessarily about getting the credit for it, but seeing the final result of like, no, my wife, she might not say, "Oh, thank you for paying the mortgage this month," but it feels good to be able to pay the mortgage, to be able to have the lights on, be able to have food in the refrigerator if something happens, to be able to take care of that. And so I think I first got married, first had kids, you you kind of you still have a little bit of those selfish ways. Like for instance, big thing with me, I used to always love sneakers. And so I might get a new pair of sneakers, but I might try to sneak them in the house because I didn't want my wife to say anything. And so now it's kind of one of those things to where like find some extra money. Let's take my wife out for a date, or out, my kid might need something. Let's take him out for ice cream or something like that. To where you before you might like, no, I want to take the extra money for me. But now it's just like, you know what? I just want to pour it into y'all and I'll get back whatever I get back and being okay with that. And that's a feeling that takes time to kind of really buy into and get used to. But the seeing that end result is just what makes it just kind of better and makes it worth it.
Oh man, that's great. And congratulations on your 12 years of marriage and stuff like that. That also great within our community. That breaks some of the cycles and the things that they talk about us as Black men. So man, again, congratulations on being 12 years in marriage and there for your family and stuff like that, because that's important. I believe family is a great way for us to move forward, make progress, and break some of the generational, as they say, curses or generational strongholds. So that is really important as we go forward on this journey. So my next question is, where can the listeners find you and support the great work that you're doing for the next generation of students or leaders, I should say?
So I recently I just started getting back on LinkedIn right after I finished up school, trying to get more active on that. So on LinkedIn is definitely a good place to find me. They can follow me on Instagram. I tell people, man, I follow back, man, so don't even worry about it. My Instagram handle is DJ921. I'm on Twitter, but I don't really use Twitter like that. Twitter is a little bit, it's a little bit too spicy for me. So I try to just stay off Twitter, but I like to read it sometimes. But
Okay.
definitely on LinkedIn and on Instagram is where they could definitely find me. And outside of that, I'm at North Carolina Central University. Hopefully, I'll be there for a few more years to come. And yeah, that's definitely where they could locate me.
Okay, man, and I'll definitely put in the description how they can contact you. Once they're watching this, they can always scroll down, find that connection, so they can maybe ask more questions, maybe learn about the program, and maybe they have students that in that area that would like to come to the school, because sometimes people choose their schools based on the individuals that they get to know more about. So I'll definitely put the ways to connect with you in the description. So, and thanks for sharing that. My final question for you is, what impact do you want to have on the world?
I think I start out in small little increments, right? So let's say, for instance, if I left the job I'm at today, is it better than when I got it? And so
Okay.
that's one impact I want to have. I look at going to institutions and at least wanting to see one graduating class come through. And so being able to have those relationships with students. And so the impact I just want to have is for individuals who either got to work with me, whether it be colleagues or students I got to work with, just for them to always feel like I was available to them, that I was present for them, and that they could always count on me as far as their needing support and needing those honest conversations. And so, really, that's kind of how I really wanted to impact the world, is just kind of trying to make sure that people coming behind me go further than I went. And so that's like to me, it's kind of like one of those, if you're not pushing people to be better than you, we're kind of setting ourselves up as, especially as a African American people, to be at a disadvantage. So I feel like you always want people coming behind you to do better than you. I never want to come off as that crabs in the barrel type of mentality. And so just pouring into students to make sure that they're able to make another impact for the generation behind them.
Okay, man, that's great. And always, it's about making an impact. And I really love that perspective, that make sure we're not pulling each other down, because we have a lot already that are against us. So our job is to make sure we uplift, encourage, and support wherever we can. We may not be able to support everyone, but we'll make sure we're not pulling each other down and stopping them from becoming who they are capable of becoming. So Dr. Johnson, man, it's been a great conversation. And man, thanks for taking the time to be here on the Black Male Impact.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's a pleasure. And for the listeners, as always, please continue to support us. Please continue to share, like, and comment on the program that we are doing. And because the goal is to inspire positive change, our goal is to let others realize what is possible by seeing other Black men who are doing great work and making great contribution in society. And again, thanks for being here on the Black Male Impact.
All right. Have a good one.